Welcome to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Empowering women like you to amplify your voice, your message, your movement. We believe that if 10,000 new women stepped into high-level leadership platforms, we can transform the industries across the planet. 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. And now your host, Narissa Street.
Hi, how are you? So grateful you guys came back to listen to the podcast again. I know by now you've subscribed and you know that we are everywhere. So of course you're telling your friends, but you know that what we are really here for is another fantastic origin story of a fantastic woman. We are delighted to be interviewing the incomparable career educator, Ellen Marie McPhillip, who has some stunning revelations and great insights for you, especially if you're trying to figure out how to do business in a way that's in alignment with who you are and your soul. So, Ellen Marie McPhillip. So, hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Narissa, for including me in this amazing on.
So, lots of questions, but the biggest one and the most important one is, who are you?
Well, I, like many women of a certain age, we have a sort of a long and complex story. So my job is I am actually the Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Business Education at the University of Miami. This will be my 21st year, basically worrying young people through their undergraduate journey. But that's not who I am. Who I am is an entrepreneur, is a writer. I'm a deep thinker about the questions of our day, and I want to write and talk about those ideas with really smart women who have been on a journey themselves and bring to bear experience, wisdom, and frankly, core values that they don't necessarily stray from. So who I am is we're still figuring that out at 102 years of age. But certainly, as we think about what is important to me, I am now the content director of a small enterprise called the Badass Women's Network, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I've had a career as a journalist, as a marketer in places like the New York Times, Scholastic, and then I helped my husband do a startup of cable TV in Trinidad and Tobago. So we can talk at length about all kinds of things, but that's the short of it.
That's not a short of anything. That is fantastic. And I love that you say women of a certain age. My thought is women of a certain distinction. And,
there you go.
Yeah. And because longevity in any platform in any industry is amazing. So first, to start from a 21-year career in education, which is no joke. As an educator myself, it's a daily commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a daily commitment. So to have 21 years in as storied an organization as the University of Miami is phenomenal. And then also to connect strongly in partnership with your husband to support him in launching a cable network, which in itself, education is one platform, but cable and media is another platform. So to be able to, again, have longevity in that and then start up that is fantastic. So there's so many ways that we can start from them. So I also heard Badass Women's Network, which in itself, right? We're all chomping at the bit. Sounds really yummy and juicy. So I mean, you do feel like a badass woman. So
I am from a history of badass women. So it's in the genes. It's in the
awesome.
DNA.
So we're going to talk about that DNA and everything along that. So then what's driving you right now? So you said content director of Badass Women's Network. So what's driving you in that role right now?
Well, partly because I've had such a long impact in education, I've really begun to understand that so many of our young women in their 30s who are really about to pivot to certain kinds of decisions or choices, that the role models that are being elevated for them, frankly, I don't find particularly compelling. What I hear are celebrity and sports icons, and that's wonderful. Those women have have had great opportunities. But for someone that's trying to enter a corporate environment or start a business, figure out how to actually build a family, create all of the infrastructure that you need to be successful in all of these various spaces of your life, you need other women who have basically done it and done it right. And so I find that those voices have not been heard and have not been elevated. I'm also sort of a history buff. And so in sort of doing a lot of homework on the civil rights movement, it always fascinated me that so much of the early historiography was around Martin Luther King, when there were people like Mahalia Jackson and Ella Baker and Mary Bethune-Cookman, these storied women who basically lifted the civil rights movement up on its shoulders, and yet their stories are the last to be told. So it's very important to me to be able to meet really smart, thoughtful, serious women who've got things to say, and then elevate those stories and then network those communities, our young people and our women of distinction, to use your term, to network those women together. Because I think that that's what's missing, that intergenerational connectivity, so that we learn from each other and about each other, and we move the history of our community to a much different narrative, and one that we tell, not that someone else tells.
Right. Completely excited to hear that, because I feel the same way in that I think it's been for a while that women have felt that their role has been of support, and I think that that's a socialization, particularly if you are grounded in a certain community. So I found working in the neighborhoods that I work, that even to this day, and we are, whoever's listening to this, we're in 2021. Even to this day, there are students who talk to me and tell me that they're not allowed to go certain places. And these things have been ingrained in them because they're being raised by grandparents, right? And so with that, it is so important for not just the young, but those who surround the young to be mentored in the way that you're talking about, to see news stories that aren't necessarily new, but just not amplified, and so I applaud you for seeing that and for taking that on. And also being a connection to history. And I think being able to tie all of that together, as you said, the intergenerational connection has been lost for so many years. And again, having to do with the cultures, the culture that I'm raised in, which is Caribbean, there are certain things where you don't talk, right? And so the stories that should be passed on are not.
Right.
And the shame that shouldn't be passed on is. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the last thing is that, the reason why Badass Women, certainly it's within sort of the what they call the zeitgeist, right? There's a certain final expectation and acceptance that there are certain women, and I am one of them, that I believe in saying what's on my mind respectfully, but in a room. And that has not always been appreciated. Certainly, in the corporate environment, they didn't always know what to do with me. I was usually one of one. And I was invariably that girl in the room that wasn't my intent to make people uncomfortable, but I asked the questions that were fact-based. And so I want to celebrate that woman, that girl, that wisdom, and help our young women, to use your word again, not be ashamed of that voice, and to elevate her in a way that is respectful and positive for all.
Hey, this is a great episode, right? Want to carry the insight from our show wherever you go? Visit myjoyisvaluable.com for the best resources that we've gathered that are inspired by expert guests. Find support for your business, tools to organize your life, and more. That's myjoyisvaluable.com.
Well, I think that's the only way forward, and the work that you're doing. We can't do this, as you said in the very beginning, we can't do this in a silo, right? The types of lives that we want to live and are urged from within ourselves to live, they require other people, right? And so this culturization of women, sisters could do it for themselves. That we need to just toss that away, and we need to, taking wisdom from other cultures, that family is everything, community is everything. We don't have to do it on our own. So to have a collaboration and a connection and a community is fantastic. So how did you get aligned with Badass Women's Network?
So, to be honest with you, because I am of Jamaican parentage, and so every woman that I've ever come into contact with, whether it be from a familial perspective or just the kinds of women that I'm attracted to in terms of exchanging ideas, they just have a certain thing about them. They're not timid. And I don't mind timid women. I mean, we get along great, but it's just not how I tend to roll. And so one afternoon, my sister and I, who actually was in Hollywood for 30 years, she became one of the few Hollywood executives of a major studio, equally as, shall we say, forward thinking. And we just looked at one another and said, we are so done with what is quote unquote the norm out here, and we're just gonna go for it. And so out of that came the idea of the Badass Women's Network. And I swear, not a month later, Self magazine put Serena on the cover, and whatever her name is, McCarthy, and there it was, Badass Women on the cover of Self magazine. And I'm like, we didn't think of that one,
But is alignment.
There we are.
That's alignment. That's the universe saying yes. That's fantastic. And again, I'm hoping that the audience is hearing that you trusted your intuition, you trusted the urge in you to just go and do it. And how. So let's dig into that, right? So great that you had your sister, but were there any hesitation points for you?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. First of all, the word badass, if you look it up on the internet, by virtue of the numbers and kinds of searches that have been done, they're all negative images. And that surprised me, that there was already a pronounced and specific sort of iconography around this notion of what it means to be badass, not for men, but for women. So that was one. Two, I realized that it takes a certain kind of confidence to allow that moniker to be applied to oneself. And I just said, you know what? It's not about cussing. It's not about being provocative. It's just that I own this idea of being responsible and accountable for myself. And that means that there are other like-minded women out there. But I can tell you, I got a lot of, really, do you really want to go there? Do you really think that that's really the way to? And I said, okay, I'll go think about it again. And then I couldn't kill it. It was too rich. And what's crazy is that when we designed the logo, the actual image, and I'll share it with you one day. When you look at it, it actually looks like the body of a woman. So I just said, you know what? Let me go see boy, as they say in Trinidad. And here we are.
So it's interesting. The other layer to that I'm hearing is, once you have an idea and you get the urge to move forward on it, there is going to be what's been documented several places as resistance. And the resistance first sometimes shows up inner, but then a lot of times shows up outer. And what we have to do is acknowledge that this is just part of the practice. This is just part of what we do, and they say resistance is what builds your muscle, right? So I think that's something to look at. And for my audience that's listening, I want you to hear that she pushed through that resistance, not out of ego, but because the idea kept returning. Mm-hmm. Am I on it with you?
Yes, absolutely. And my sister coined a phrase that she in Hollywood used to use all the time, especially when it was a massive budget and there was a lot at stake. And so we sort of adopted it as part of the moniker of Badass Women. And we say we're riding with the fear. What does that mean? Riding with the fear. Can't hear you.
But let's say that one more time so people can hear it. We're doing what now?
Riding with the fear.
See, we keep thinking we got to take the fear and kill it, and then we'll emerge victorious. But then there it is again. It's that muscle. It's the fear is on the horse with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some days you're you and it's going in one direction and you going in the other.
All right, wait. I am still here.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Yes, but we're both still here. You and the fear, and so I think, it's fantastic. So part of what I'm hearing, because what we're looking at with the Badass Women is you're driven by something from the inside, right? And so part of that is values. Part of that is being driven by the things that are important to you. On top of that, though, with all of the things that we love as Badass Women, there is our desire to make money, to drive a business, to impact our community, right? How are we driving our business while holding our ethics?
Well, here's the revenue model for Badass Women is fundamentally about sort of what I call tourism when it comes back. In other words, I want to be able to take Badass Women on small, intimate what I call explorations, whether it be in history or art or poetry or music. And it's an event that's surrounding and fulfilling, but it is driven by inquiry. I mean, I'm an educator. It's the thing that I love to do. I love to learn. I love to teach. I love to sort of really dig into other people's curiosity. So if you're to travel to Jamaica with me, it's both historical and lyrical. If you're traveling to Rome with me, it's artistic and we're looking at the humanities. So very much about smart thinking and trying to delve more deeply into ideas that other people find interesting. The other thing that we're doing, and this is one of the core features and values of the Badass Women's Network, I'm committed to helping Black and Brown women, what we call, know their numbers. And what I mean by that is we will be hosting several events that surround financial literacy and healthful living and wellness. The reason for these two strains of thinking is because often as Black and Brown women, especially as we take on more and more of the sort of caregiving responsibilities of our families, we forget that we have to take care of ourselves really, as opposed to, yeah, man, I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry. Don't worry, I got this. And also, too, financial health leads to less stress, but we don't always know how unwell financially we are, especially when we're just fighting for life and breath. And so my goal is to really put in place different kinds of skills and toolkits and so on, so that women can be comfortable checking in to their healthfulness and their financial wellness and make it part of their lifestyle. And that too is being a badass woman.
Want to hear more fantastic shows like this one? Visit blackwomenpodcasting.com, the only podcast directory and platform exclusively featuring the voices of Black women across the globe. Listen to experts in business, relationships, spirituality, culture, and more. blackwomenpodcasting.com.
So a lot about that will appeal to my audience because we do have conversations on self-care, and the financial piece, when you've been in survival mode for so long, right? And you have the dollar and you're making it $5, right? The real look at the finances is scary because,
yes.
I think it's a thought of that if I really know my numbers, then I'm not going to be able to, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm supposed to do. But I think the issue is that if you've been able to survive with the lack of knowledge, mm-hmm. What's going to happen when you actually do have the knowledge? Like, you're going to be like, what? You mean exactly. I can make 1,000 into 5,000 or 10,000 because I've been making $1 into $5? It's great.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot to be said about women supporting women. And there's a lot to be said about acknowledging whatever it is that we're struggling with is probably something that someone else is struggling with too. Mm-hmm. And sharing that burden together.
Absolutely.
So, sounds amazing. Go ahead.
And just as a last thing, and this is actually, again, sort of predicated on the work that I've done for the last umpteen number of years.
Sure.
So many people start businesses or start initiatives and they don't have the infrastructure built that is going to build wealth. They may even earn income, but they don't build wealth. And so it's a mindset as well as a skill set. And so these are sort of the differentiations I want to be able to really tease out for our community so that they can employ the real tools that help push them out of survival mode into building an ecosystem that feeds them and fuels them.
And that is a key, because what our community has been for the longest time pushing forward is you need to earn more income. You need to earn more income. You need to start a business to earn more income, side hustle, side hustle. But that is still an exchange of time for money, and not an exchange of your expertise, your value for wealth. Right. So the fact that you're targeting that is going to be really valuable for our community. And it's interesting. The work that I do now, I work with podcasters. Right. So I have an organization called Black Women Podcasting. Funny that wasn't something that existed before. But I find that it's a struggle getting women to focus on the things that will build their infrastructure, because they're just like, I need to get income. Right. And it's like, no, okay, well, let's we need the foundation, because the income will just bounce in and bounce out.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You need,
you're on it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, right now, Badass Women's Network we are a podcast. And once we are all, yes, I'm again, riding with the fear, as my sister has coined.
Well, we're with you. We're with you. Happy to support in whatever way.
Awesome. And
whatever way.
We definitely want to have you share. So, I'm going to get back on your calendar and say, okay, my turn.
Sure.
So, I think that it's such a joy to be able to meet new faces and hear their story. So that's what I'm doing.
That's part of your mission, to amplify voices. So we're going to dig into a few more things and then we'll wrap. So for someone who is a woman of distinction, I think a lot of people have this conversation about this great storied career, and a lot of emerging business women struggle with the fear of making a mistake. Right. So I'd like you to share with us, what has been your best failure?
My best. Oh, okay. There's a story there. So this was actually when I had a corporate career, and I was hired at a very substantive newspaper that was really, in those days, the newspaper business was really on its last legs. This is just before the internet sort of really took hold. The newspaper industry understood that there was something coming. They didn't understand it. They didn't know how frankly, media was going to fundamentally change, but they knew that they were in trouble in terms of the traditional revenue model that existed. And so I was charged with this lots of different sales activities, but one particular account had literally been dormant for something like 7 or 8 years. And what I later came to realize was that often when you're a person of color and they're not quite sure what they do with you, you get one of those impossible tasks. Go see if you can make this work, and not necessarily there's no expectation that you're going to be able to pull it off. There may not even be resources there to pull it off. But you know what? You're so good. Go see if you can figure this out. But I was really young, and I'm sure members of your audience who are in professional life, they've seen where they're not necessarily set up for success when given a project. So I see you grinning there. I see you grinning. Should I stop before I go on?
No. I mean, I want everybody to hear this. If you have failed at something in your professional life, I want you to hear what Ella Marie is saying about being set up. Oh, my Lord. Continue, please.
Or let's just say not expected to succeed. And fast forward, I went on a sales call, not really knowing the lay of the land. And the person to whom I was introduced to took my head off. I mean, clean, and leveled me for all of the grievances against that he had been experiencing for 5 or 7 years. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. But I basically pulled my life back together, walked out of the conference room, and maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later, I was in a networking event for the Chamber of Commerce. And I sat at the table, didn't know anybody, and started talking about what was one of the projects that I was also working on, which was the Vietnam Memorial that was being fundraised at the time. And the woman who sat next to me said, wow, I had no idea anybody was actually sort of taking that on in your organization. I said, well, we're trying to start a little something so that we can start to generate some real interest, because in this county, a lot of Vietnam vets came from this particular community. Fast forward, turns out this was the wife of the guy who took my head off. And we went round and round and round and round, and eventually fast friends. And she got me a second interview with the guy. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I mean, this is the story. So we went to her home, we had tea, it was a thing. And so I invited the boss, who basically put me on this wonderful project, to go with me to the second interview. And fast forward, we landed the account. It's a multi-million-dollar account. Good to go. Valentine's Day, he sent me a dozen yellow roses. I love yellow roses. But when I saw the card, and given what I really knew had transpired, I won't say what was on the card, but I cut off the head of every one of those roses and dumped them in the garbage. And to this day, I remember how I felt when I landed that account. And all the mucky mucks made bonus, and I made salary. So that's my story.
Look, y'all, I need you to understand that she actually just took out her heart and showed you so that you could understand some things about knowing your value and knowing how valuable being authentic and kind and generous to whoever is in your circle, and how the universe cleaned that up for you when there was grace for you, because you went, this is the assignment they're giving me, I'm going to take it on. So there have been times, I know from my audience, that you've been cut down, you've been cut off at the knees. And I want you to know that if you stepped into something with the right, as you say, values, undergirding you, that the grace will scoop it back up. But I mean, so much, there's so much, because I think part of the best failure is you're no longer working for that company, of course. and that you know how powerful a salesperson that you are, and that you made that authentic connection and was able to get the second.
Yeah.
The relationship, to build a relationship.
But there are these moments in your life that you don't understand them at the time, and you can look back now and say, wow, that made me who I am today.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
wow.
you for letting
Okay.
me.
So the last question that I ask is always an interesting question, and it might give you a little bit of introspection. So my audience a lot of times is making the decision to step into some higher profile in some way, shape, or form, to take a stand, to move forward, to move their career in a progressive direction. But along with that higher profile is your, you when you make the mistakes, they are more amplified.
Sure.
So how do you handle mistakes that are made in public?
Badly.
That's great. Okay. Tell
do.
us about that.
My staff knows that I don't set goals, I set expectations. And so I am not hard to work for if you and I agree that you have done your best work. But if you have been sloppy, haven't paid attention to the details that we've agreed upon, then we're not going to have an easy ride of it. And so mistakes, everyone makes mistakes. That's the nature of being in business. But what matters is that when a mistake happens, one takes responsibility. And if I make the mistake, I'm quick. I will defend my staff, and I will take on the heat and the but I don't like it. And my staff knows I don't like it. So when my students come to me and they, the first words out of their mouths are, but, my mother-in-law taught me something that I've always sort of internalized as a true Caribbean woman. And so I leave this with your audience. So when you are busy pointing one finger out, there are four fingers looking back at you. And that's how I manage my team, how I've tried to manage my family, and how I try to manage my life. Yes, there's room for everyone to take on a little bit of stuff, but what was my role in also adding to the confusion or the outcome that was undesirable?
So we hear responsibility, which is, of course, also a core value. And so, yeah, it's beautiful that, I heard take responsibility quickly, and then, of course, work so that it doesn't happen.
Again,
right. So I really appreciate your time that you spent with us. Please tell our audience where they can find you.
So they can find us at www.badasswomensnetwork.org. The website is up, and certainly they can find our episodes of other badass women who are sharing their story on iTunes, Spotify, and any basically platform that you listen to a podcast. Yeah. Narissa, this has been such a joy and a real pleasure for me. So thank you for your grace and for your generosity.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time and your expertise.
Thank you for tuning in to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Find us at 10,000women10,000stages.com.